My name is Sierra, and I am 29. Last 4th of July, my older brother stood up at our backyard cookout, raised his beer in front of the whole family, and called my life a tiny rented shoebox. My cousins chuckled. My dad actually smirked. Great Aunt Betty stood up, returned the insult in just 2 sentences, and my brother choked on his burger. But the story started 20 minutes earlier at 1:15 in the afternoon with one heavy yellow envelope and a bank letter I wouldn't show to anyone until the time was right. Because when my parents finally chose to look inside that envelope, their whole reality broke. None of it was my fault. Before I take you back to that sweltering July afternoon, tap the like button if you've ever held a quiet truth a long time. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read everyone. Let me go back to the 4th of July, 1:15 in the afternoon, and the smell of melting asphalt outside my apartment window. The AC unit in my 400 square foot downtown studio was rattling. It always rattled when the Tampa heat hit 98 degrees. I was standing at my tiny counter. I was packing 3 ceramic serving platters into a cardboard box. I made the platters myself. I own a small pottery studio 3 blocks away. I built it from nothing. My grandmother had left me a small kiln before she passed away from cancer 4 years ago. Her sister, my Great Aunt Betty, had kept it in her garage for me until I could afford the commercial space. I taped the box shut. I wore denim shorts and a plain gray tank top. I did not dress up. I walked down the 3 flights of concrete stairs because the elevator in my building was broken again. The steering wheel of my 2014 Honda burned the palms of my hands. The drive to my parents' house in the suburbs of Carrollwood took 35 minutes. I hit every red light on Dale Mabry Highway. When I pulled into the driveway, the cookout was already loud. The smell of charcoal and cheap sunscreen hung heavy in the thick air. I parked on the street. I carried my heavy box up the driveway. My brother Brandon was standing on the pool deck. He was not helping set up. He was holding a frosted glass of imported IPA. He wore a crisp linen shirt unbuttoned to his chest. He was talking loudly to our uncle about his new landscaping service. "They charge $400 a month, but you get what you pay for," Brandon said. He laughed. My dad was at the grill. He flipped a burger and smiled at Brandon. "That 5-bedroom place needs a professional crew, right?" my dad said. He looked proud. He did not look at me when I walked through the screen door. I set the heavy box on the patio table. Great Aunt Betty was sitting in a green folding lawn chair under the patio fan. She wore a floral blouse and was drinking iced tea. She nodded at me. Just a small, sharp nod. She understood things without speaking. Brandon noticed me. He did not say hello. He pointed his glass at my box. "Careful with the arts and crafts, guys," he said. "Don't want to break the inventory. Rent in downtown is due soon." 2 cousins chuckled. My dad smirked. He actually smirked. I did not say anything. I unpacked the platters. My mom walked out carrying a bowl of fruit. She gave me a one-armed hug that barely touched my shoulders. "Oh, sweetie, you made it," she said. "I know you've been so stressed with your little shop. It's good you took a break." Her sympathy was empty. It looked nice to the cousins, but she had not visited my shop in 2 years. I just nodded. I walked into the kitchen to wash my hands. The kitchen was quiet. The AC in here was silent and freezing. Through the front window, I saw a strange car park behind mine. A man in a sweat-stained blue polo shirt got out. He carried a thick yellow envelope. He did not look like a party guest. He looked tired. I dried my hands on a paper towel. I opened the front door before he could ring the bell. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Looking for Brandon Miller," he said. He wiped his forehead. "I have a delivery for him. Signature required. I'm his sister. He's out back. I can sign." The man looked at his clipboard. He shrugged. He handed me the pen. I signed my name. He handed me the yellow envelope and walked back to his car. The envelope was heavy. The top flap was not sealed properly. The Tampa humidity had melted the cheap glue. It popped open in my hand. I pulled out the top sheet of paper. It was a letter from a national bank. It was a notice of default and intent to foreclose. The property address was Brandon's 5-bedroom house. The past due amount was $14,250.30. He had missed the April, May, and June payments. I stared at the black ink on the white paper. The numbers did not make sense at first. $14,250.30. I folded the thick paper exactly along its original crease. I slid it back into the yellow envelope. My hands felt very cold despite the Florida heat. I walked back into the living room. I slipped the envelope into the bottom of my canvas tote bag on the sofa. I did not want to cause a scene. I had spent my entire adult life avoiding scenes. I walked back out to the patio. The midday sun reflected off the pool water and hurt my eyes. I walked toward the large blue cooler near the pool pump to grab a bottle of water. My dad and Brandon were standing just behind the screen of the lanai. The screen hid me from their view. "I wired the $15,000 to your business account this morning," my dad was saying. His voice was low and extremely proud. "That should cover the new landscaping trucks, right? I am really glad you are expanding so fast." Brandon laughed a confident, easy laugh. "Thanks, Dad. It really helps. My cash flow is just temporarily tied up in the house upgrades. You know how real estate investments go." I closed the cooler lid. The plastic made a soft thud. Brandon was bleeding our parents dry. He was taking their savings to fund a fake business expansion while he was secretly losing his house. I walked across the hot concrete. I went straight to Great Aunt Betty. She was still sitting in her green folding chair. I sat on the edge of the brick planter next to her. She looked at my face. "You look like you just saw a bad car wreck," she said quietly. I looked around. My mom was busy setting out paper plates. My cousins were in the pool. "I signed for a certified delivery at the front door," I whispered. It was for Brandon. I leaned closer to her. "It was a notice of foreclosure. He is 3 months behind on his mortgage. And I just heard Dad tell him he wired him $15,000 for business trucks." Betty did not gasp. She did not act shocked. She set her glass of iced tea on the small plastic table beside her. A ring of condensation pooled on the plastic. Her jaw tightened until the skin around her mouth went white. "David is a fool," she said. "David is my father." She kept her eyes fixed on Brandon across the yard. It was 2:30. My mom brought out the large tray of grilled burgers and hot dogs. Everyone gathered around the 2 patio tables. Brandon grabbed a fresh bottle of beer from the cooler. He held it up. He tapped the glass with a metal grilling tong. The talking stopped. The splashing in the pool stopped. "I want to make a quick toast," Brandon said. He smiled his big, practiced smile. He looked directly across the table at me. "To family, and to growth." He raised the bottle higher. "Cheers to my new 5-bedroom house. It takes a lot of hard work and hustle to get out of the starter phase, unlike some people still renting a 400-square-foot shoebox in downtown at 29 years old." My dad smirked. He actually smiled at the joke. My mom looked down at the bowl of potato chips and said nothing. I rolled my eyes. I took a slow sip of my bottled water. I prepared to swallow the insult and eat my food in silence. But Great Aunt Betty did not stay silent. She stood up from her lawn chair. The metal frame creaked loudly. Everyone looked at her. "Well," Betty said. Her voice was not shaking. It cut through the humid air like a knife. "At least she owns her small business outright, while your so-called mansion has been in foreclosure since you missed 3 payments in April." The entire backyard froze in absolute shock. Nobody breathed. Brandon had just taken a massive bite of his burger. He stopped chewing. His eyes went wide. He started coughing. He choked hard on the meat. He had to grab the wooden railing of the deck with both hands to keep his balance. His face turned bright purple. The metal grilling tongs slipped out of his hand. They hit the concrete deck with a loud clang. The sound bounced off the house. My dad's smirk vanished completely. My mom's hand stopped moving over the chip bowl. The only sound left in the yard was the pool pump humming. Brandon coughed a final, wet cough. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. His eyes darted around the quiet yard, looking at the cousins who were staring at him. "Aunt Betty, I think the Florida heat is getting to you," he said. His voice was too loud. It squeaked at the end. "Foreclosure? I just put a new quartz island in the kitchen last week." My dad stepped forward. He picked up the metal tongs from the concrete. He looked at Betty with a hard, protective expression. "Betty, that is a terrible joke to make at a family cookout. Brandon's business is booming." My mom finally looked up from the bowl of chips. "Let's just eat before the food gets cold," she said softly. She wanted the uncomfortable moment to disappear. She always did. I did not let it disappear. I walked away from the patio table. I walked to the glass sliding door. I slid it open. A rush of freezing AC hit my sweaty face. I walked into the living room, reached into my canvas tote, and pulled out the thick yellow envelope. I walked back outside into the heat. I did not look at Brandon. I walked straight to my dad by the grill. I held out the envelope. "A courier dropped this off at the front door 20 minutes ago," I said. My voice was very level. He needed a signature. I signed for it. My dad looked at the envelope. He did not take it right away. A drop of sweat rolled down his temple. "What is it?" he asked. "It is a notice of default," I said, "from the bank. The exact amount past due is $14,250.30. Brandon lunged forward. He tried to snatch the envelope from my hand. "Give me my mail," You have no right to touch my personal mail." He was fast, but my dad was closer. My dad grabbed the envelope first. He pulled the thick, folded paper out. He put on his reading glasses. The glasses hung around his neck on a thin black string. He read the paper. He read it for a long time. The edges of the paper fluttered slightly in the humid breeze. "Brandon," my dad said. His voice sounded hollow. All the pride from 10 minutes ago was completely gone. "It says here you missed the payments for April, May, and June." Brandon crossed his arms over his chest. He stared down at the pool water. He refused to look at our dad. "It's a clerical error, Dad. The bank messed up my autopay when I switched my LLC accounts. I told you, my cash is just tied up right now." My dad lowered the paper. He looked over the top of his reading glasses at his favorite son. "You asked me for $15,000 this morning," my dad said. "You told me it was to buy 2 new commercial mowers. Was it to pay the bank?" "I needed a bridge loan," Brandon snapped. He threw his hands up in the air. His face was red again, but this time from anger. "Why is everyone attacking me? I am trying to build a legacy for this family. Real estate has risks. You wouldn't understand. You've worked a safe desk job your whole life." My mom covered her mouth with both of her hands. She backed up until her shoulders hit the siding of the house. My dad looked at the notice of default again. "I wired the money at 9 o'clock this morning," he whispered. Great Aunt Betty stood up slowly. She walked over to the patio table and picked up her iced tea. "You should call your bank, David," she said calmly. "See if you can cancel that wire." Brandon glared at her. Then he glared at me. "You planned this," he hissed at me. "You are so jealous of my house that you ruined the 4th of July on purpose." He turned around, kicked a plastic pool toy out of his way, and stormed inside the house. The screen door slammed shut behind him. The screen door bounced twice on its hinges before it clicked shut. The sharp sound echoed across the pool deck. My dad stared at the closed door. He did not move for 10 seconds. Then he reached into his khaki shorts pocket and pulled out his cell phone. His thumb was actually shaking. It trembled against the glass screen as he dialed. He dialed the customer service number on the back of his bank card. He pressed the speaker button. We all heard the robotic voice through the phone speaker. "Thank you for calling. Our offices are currently closed in observance of the Independence Day holiday. Standard business hours will resume tomorrow at 8 a.m. My dad pressed the 0 key 4 times in a row. The automated voice just repeated the same cheerful message. He ended the call. He put the phone back in his pocket. His shoulders slumped. He looked 10 years older than he had when he was flipping burgers. The wire transfer was gone. Once a wire clears, it cannot be reversed. He knew that. My mom started picking up the paper plates. She moved very fast. Her hands darted across the table. She scraped half-eaten hot dogs and baked beans into a black plastic trash bag. "He just needs time to sort it out," she said. She was not talking to us. She was talking to the trash bag. "We will talk to him tomorrow. It is just a misunderstanding. Everything is fine." I walked inside the house to get my car keys. The living room felt heavy and empty. I looked out the front window. Brandon's silver pickup truck was already backing out of the driveway. He backed over a sprinkler head. He did not stop to check it. He shifted into drive and sped down the street. He did not say goodbye to anyone. 3 days later, it was Tuesday morning. I was in my pottery studio. The smell of wet clay and dry plaster filled the small room. I was wedging a large block of gray clay on my heavy wooden work table. My hands were covered in dry white slip that cracked when I bent my fingers. I pushed my weight into the clay. It was hard work. It kept my mind quiet. The brass bell above the front door jingled. Great Aunt Betty walked in. She carried a greasy brown paper bag from a Cuban bakery down the street. She set the bag on my clean display counter. "Wash your hands," she said. "Bring your laptop out here." I went to the deep utility sink in the back. I washed the clay off my hands. I dried them on a rough towel. I unplugged my laptop from the back office and set it on the counter next to her bakery bag. "Open the State Business Registry website," Betty said. "You know how to use it. You filed the paperwork for this shop yourself." I typed in the web address for Sunbiz, the Florida corporate registry. The screen glowed bright in the dusty shop. I typed in the name of Brandon's landscaping company, Apex Elite Landscaping LLC. I clicked search. The page loaded slowly. There was only one result. I clicked on his company name. I looked at the top status line. It did not say active. The bold red letters said involuntary dissolution. "Read the date," Betty said quietly. "October 14th, 2 years ago." I read out loud. My voice felt dry. The state shut his company down 2 years ago for failing to file annual reports. He did not have a booming landscaping business. He did not have a business at all. Now open the county property appraiser site, Betty said. She opened the bakery bag and pulled out a plain guava pastry. She took a very small bite. I opened a new tab. I typed in the address of Brandon's 5-bedroom house. The public property record loaded. I scrolled past the tax map. I scrolled down to the mortgage history. My stomach felt like a cold stone. There was his first mortgage from when he bought the house. But right below it was a second entry, a home equity line of credit. He had taken it out 14 months ago. The borrowed amount was $85,000. He has no business, I said. I stared at the screen. He borrowed against his own house to pretend he had money. He bought the trucks and the quartz kitchen island with debt, and now the money is gone. Betty chewed her pastry slowly. She swallowed. She looked at the laptop screen. He built a house of cards, she said, and your father just handed him $15,000 of retirement money to buy a few more cards. We need to find out exactly how much David has given him over the years. I stared at the laptop screen. The shop felt very quiet. The only sound was the low hum of the small refrigerator in the corner. Then, my cell phone buzzed against the wooden counter. The screen flashed my mom's name. It was 11:15 a.m. My mom never called me during my work hours. She always said she did not want to interrupt my little hobby. I picked up the phone. I pressed it to my ear. My card declined, my mom said. Her voice was thin. She sounded out of breath. I was at Publix. I had a full cart. The total was $142.50. The cashier tried the debit card 3 times. The machine said insufficient funds. I wiped a smudge of dried clay off the edge of the phone. Did you check the app, Mom? I don't know how to use the app, she whispered. Your dad handles the main accounts. I just used the checking account for the house. But he is in the garage. He locked the heavy fire door from the inside. He won't answer me when I knock. I looked at Great Aunt Betty. She was folding the brown bakery bag into a neat, tight square. I will be there in 20 minutes, I told my mom. I hung up. I grabbed my car keys. Betty waved her hand toward the door. Go, she said. I will watch the shop, find out what David did. I drove back up Dale Mabry Highway. The traffic was lighter than Sunday, but my chest felt tight. I parked in my parents' driveway behind my mom's white sedan. I let myself in through the front door. The house smelled like stale coffee and lemon floor cleaner. My mom was sitting on a tall wooden stool at the kitchen island. She had her iPad resting in its red leather case on the granite counter. She was staring at the blank black screen. She did not look up when I walked in. I set my keys on the counter. I pulled up a stool next to her. Unlock it, I said. She typed in her 4-digit passcode. I opened the web browser. I went to their bank's website. I typed in my dad's username. The password was saved in the browser. It always was. I clicked log in. The main dashboard loaded. The joint checking account balance was in bold black numbers at the top. It read -$34. The $15,000, my mom said. Her hands rested flat on the cool granite. He wired the $15,000 yesterday morning. It drained the regular account. No, I said. I shook my head. Dad wouldn't wire money he needed for groceries. He has his retirement savings. He has the money market account. Where is that? I clicked on the tab labeled Investment and Savings. The screen refreshed. The money market account, which had held my parents' emergency cash for a decade, had a balance of $112.18. My mom made a small, sharp sound in the back of her throat. It was not a cry. It was the sound of a person forgetting how to breathe. I clicked on the transaction history for the money market account. I filtered the dates. I set the calendar back to January of last year. I hit enter. A long list of red numbers appeared. They were all outbound transfers. February 12th, $4,500 transferred to Apex Elite Landscaping LLC. April 3rd, $6,000 transferred to Brandon Miller. August 22nd, $8,200 transferred to Brandon Miller. I kept scrolling. The mouse clicked softly in the quiet kitchen. Every month, sometimes twice a month, large chunks of cash had moved from my parents' safety net directly to my brother. He told me he was investing, my mom whispered. She did not look at the screen anymore. She looked at her own hands. David told me Brandon offered us a 10% return. He said Brandon was winning commercial contracts. He said it was better than leaving it in the bank. Mom, I said. I pulled up the calculator app on my phone. I started adding the red numbers from the screen. My thumb tapped the glass. The total climbed. Brandon's company was shut down by the state 2 years ago. He has no commercial contracts. I hit the equals sign. The final number sat on my phone screen. $74,800. My dad had secretly funneled almost $75,000 of their hard-earned money to a fake company, and Brandon had taken every single penny while his house still fell into foreclosure. I heard a heavy metal click. The fire door leading to the garage unlocked. The door opened slowly. My dad walked into the kitchen. He had grease on his hands. He looked at the iPad on the counter. He looked at my phone. He knew exactly what we were looking at. My dad looked at the iPad on the counter. He looked at the negative $34 on the screen. He did not look sorry. He looked angry that he had been caught. He wiped his greasy hands on a faded red shop rag. "You should not be snooping in my financial accounts," my dad said. His voice was hard. He walked over to the island and closed the iPad cover. It made a sharp slap. "I had to leave a full cart of groceries at Register 4 at Publix, David," my mom said. Her voice shook. Marge from the neighborhood garden club was in line right behind me. The cashier told me my card was empty out loud. "Where is our emergency money?" "I moved it," my dad said. He crossed his arms. Brandon had an opportunity to buy out a competitor's route. He needed liquid cash to close the deal quickly. It is an investment. It yields 10%. I looked at my father. I thought about the broken elevator in my apartment building. I thought about the 4 years I spent saving up to rent my small studio space, working night shifts at a diner to pay for my own clay and glaze. My dad had never offered me a 10% investment. He had never offered me a dime. "Dad," I said slowly, "his company does not exist. The state dissolved his LLC 2 years ago. We just checked the public records. You gave $75,000 to a ghost." My dad's face flushed bright red. He pointed a thick finger at me. "You do not understand business," my dad snapped. "You never have. Brandon takes real risks. He is trying to build a legacy for this family. Not everyone wants to sit in a rented room playing with mud all day. Real men build real assets." The words hit my chest like a physical weight. Playing with mud. I ran a legally registered business. I paid my own rent. I had zero debt. But to him, because I was a woman making art, it was just a silly hobby. Brandon was a man taking risks, so his lies were just bad luck. I did not yell. I did not cry. Crying was exactly what he expected me to do so he could call me emotional and dismiss me. Instead, I looked at the kitchen calendar pinned to the wall. "The Tampa electric bill auto drafts on Thursday," I said. My voice was completely flat. "It is July. The bill is usually over $200. You have negative $34 in checking. How are you paying for the air conditioning on Thursday, Dad?" My dad opened his mouth. No words came out. The red color slowly drained from his face, leaving his skin looking like old wax. "I'll call Brandon," my dad finally muttered. He looked down at the floor. "I will tell him to wire the electric money back. It's just a cash flow hiccup." "He is in foreclosure, David," my mom suddenly yelled. It was the loudest I had ever heard her speak in my entire life. She hit the granite counter with her flat hand. "He does not have the money. You gave away our safety net." I did not stay to watch the rest of the fight. I picked up my keys. I walked out the front door. The Florida heat felt suffocating, but the air inside that house was worse. I drove back to my pottery studio. The afternoon sun baked the dashboard of my Honda. When I walked through the glass door, the brass bell jingled. Great Aunt Betty was sitting behind my counter. She had wiped down the display shelves while I was gone. She was holding a damp yellow sponge. "Well?" Betty asked. $74,800, I said. I leaned my lower back against the front door. Dad drained the money market account, and he just told me Brandon is building a legacy, while I am just playing with mud. Betty stopped wiping the shelf. She dropped the sponge into a plastic bucket. She did not offer me fake sympathy. She reached into her black leather purse on the stool next to her. She pulled out a small green spiral notepad. "Your father came to my house at 7 in the morning on Sunday," Betty said, "before the cookout." I looked at her. "Why?" "He asked me for a personal loan," Betty said. She opened the notepad and looked at a date she had written down. "He asked me for $2,000. He told me the transmission on his truck was failing. I told him I did not have it." I stopped breathing for a second. "He asked you for money before the cookout?" "Yes," Betty said. She closed the notepad. He knew he was completely broke. He knew the accounts were empty, and yet 5 hours later, he stood by that grill and smirked when Brandon made fun of your apartment. I walked over to my heavy wooden work table. I looked at the gray clay I had been wedging earlier. My dad had known. He had watched Brandon humiliate me in front of the whole family, knowing full well that Brandon had bankrupted him. He protected Brandon's pride over my dignity. "What do we do now?" I asked Betty. Betty picked up the damp sponge again. She looked me right in the eyes. "We let the electricity get shut off," she said. I stared at Great Aunt Betty. The brass bell above the front door stayed completely still. The damp yellow sponge dripped one drop of water into the plastic bucket. "We can't do that," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. "It is going to be 96 degrees on Thursday. They will roast in that house." "Yes," Betty said. She picked up her black leather purse and slung the strap over her shoulder. "And the heat will burn off the rest of the fog your mother is living in. Sometimes people need to feel the blisters before they admit they touched a hot stove." She turned and walked out of my pottery shop. I watched her drive away in her old Buick. I locked the front door. I did not throw any more clay that afternoon. I went back to my apartment. I sat on my couch and listened to my AC unit rattle in the window. I waited. Wednesday passed quietly. Thursday arrived. The Tampa heat index hit 102 degrees by 1 p.m. The sky was a hazy, blinding white. At 2:14 p.m., my cell phone buzzed on my work table. It was my mom. I wiped my hands on my apron and answered. "The air conditioning stopped," my mom said. Her voice sounded distant and hollow. "The digital thermostat is completely blank. The refrigerator stopped humming." I did not act surprised. I did not rush. "I am closing the shop," I said. "I will be there soon." I flipped the open sign on my door to closed. I drove my Honda to the Speedway gas station on the corner. I walked inside the freezing convenience store. I bought 2 10-pound bags of cubed ice and 3-gallon jugs of distilled drinking water. The ice was heavy and cold against my chest as I carried it to my car. I drove to my parents' house. I pulled into the driveway. The heavy white garage door did not open as I pulled up. It had no power. I parked the car, grabbed the ice and water, and walked to the front door. I used my spare key. The air inside the house hit me like a physical wall. It felt like breathing inside a damp wool blanket. The ceiling fans were dead. The house was completely silent. My dad was sitting in his tan leather recliner in the living room. He was wearing a white cotton undershirt. A thick bead of sweat rolled down his temple and dropped onto his collarbone. He was reading a sports magazine. He did not look at me. "Must be a blown transformer down the street," my dad said. He flipped a glossy page. He pointed vaguely toward the front window. "Tampa Electric is terrible during the summer. They overload the grid." I set the bags of ice on the floor. I walked to the front window. I looked out through the blinds. The neighbor's large AC compressor was vibrating loudly against the side of their house. Their porch light was on. My dad was lying. He was sitting in a sweltering house, sweating through his undershirt, and he was lying to me to protect his pride. He would rather pretend the power grid failed than admit his favorite son had bankrupted him. I carried the ice into the kitchen. My mom was standing by the open sliding glass door, trying to catch a breeze that did not exist. The stick of butter on the counter had melted into a soft yellow puddle inside its glass dish. I dumped the ice into a large metal mixing bowl. I handed her a plastic cup of cold water. "I called Brandon," my mom whispered. She took the cup, but she did not drink. I left 3 voicemails. I asked him to just send the $200 back so we could turn the lights on. He hasn't called back. I needed to step outside. The air in the kitchen was suffocating me. I walked out the front door and walked down the hot concrete driveway to the mailbox. I opened the black metal door. The metal was hot enough to burn my fingertips. Inside was a small stack of envelopes. Most were junk mail. One was a thin white envelope with a red warning banner printed across the top. It was from a national collections agency in Delaware. I looked at the name window. It was not addressed to my dad. It was addressed to my mom. I walked back inside. The heat pressed down on my shoulders again. I walked into the kitchen. I set the junk mail on the granite island. I handed the white envelope to my mom. She set her water cup down. She tore the top edge of the envelope. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. She read it. Her eyes stopped moving. She read it again. She handed the paper to me. Her hand trembled so hard the paper rattled. It was a final collections notice for a commercial credit card at a major hardware retailer. The balance was $12,650. The second page itemized the purchases: 2 commercial riding mowers, 3 pallets of retaining wall blocks, a flatbed trailer. The purchases were made 14 months ago. "Mom," I said slowly, "did you open a commercial hardware card?" She shook her head. She gripped the edge of the granite counter. "Brandon asked me for my social security number last spring," she said. Her voice broke in the middle of the sentence. "He said he needed to list me as a secondary emergency contact on his new business insurance policy. I gave it to him over the phone while I was folding laundry." I looked down at the paper. Brandon had not just taken their savings. He had committed identity fraud against his own mother to buy equipment for a fake company. I held the white paper in my hand. The house was so hot that the air felt thick inside my lungs. My mom had just confessed that she gave Brandon her social security number for an insurance form. He had used it to open a massive line of commercial credit. I walked into the living room. My dad was still sitting in the tan recliner. He was wiping the back of his neck with a white washcloth. I held the paper out to him. "Read this," I said. My dad sighed. He set his sports magazine down. He picked up his reading glasses from the side table and put them on. He took the paper. He read the Delaware Collections notice. The sweat on his forehead seemed to stop moving. "He must have put her name down as a guarantor by mistake," my dad muttered. He stared at the paper, but he refused to look up at me. "Paperwork for LLCs gets complicated. I will call him." "Dad," I said. My voice was very calm. "It is not a mistake. He stole her identity to buy lawnmowers." "Do not use that word," my dad snapped loudly. He gripped the armrests of his chair. "He is your brother. He is just in a tight spot." I did not argue with him. Arguing with my dad was like punching a brick wall. You only hurt your own hands. I turned around and walked back to the kitchen. "Mom, get your purse," I said. "We are going to my shop. I have air conditioning." She nodded quickly. She grabbed her heavy leather purse from the granite counter. We left my dad sitting in the dark, sweltering house alone. The drive to my shop took 12 minutes. The AC in my Honda was on full blast. My mom stared out the passenger window at the passing strip malls. She did not speak. She just twisted the strap of her purse around her wrists. We walked into my pottery studio. The brass bell jingled. The cool, clean air hit our faces. I locked the glass front door and flipped the deadbolt. I pulled a wooden stool up to the front counter for her. I opened my laptop. "We need to check your full credit report, Mom," I said. "Right now. We need to see if there is anything else." She unzipped her wallet. She tried to pull out her Florida driver's license. Her hands were shaking so badly that the plastic card slipped. It fell onto the dusty concrete floor. I bent down and picked it up for her. I opened the web browser and went to the official annual credit report website. I typed in her full name, her birthday, and the social security number she recited to me. The screen asked 3 security questions to verify her identity. One question asked about the name of a street she lived on in 1992. She answered them all perfectly. I clicked submit. The page loaded slowly. The dashboard appeared. The first thing on the screen was her credit score. It was 512. My mom had always bragged about having a perfect 800 credit score. She had paid every bill on time her entire life. I clicked on the Open Accounts tab. The hardware store card was listed at the top. But there was another account right below it. It was a signature personal loan from a credit union based in Orlando. The balance was $30,000. I looked at the date the account was opened. It was opened exactly 2 weeks before Brandon closed on his 5-bedroom house. "Mom," I whispered. I pointed at the screen. "He used your name to get the cash down payment for his house." My mom leaned forward. She touched the laptop screen with one trembling finger. "He bought that giant house with my good name," she said softly. "And now the bank is foreclosing on it, and the creditors are coming after me." I clicked the print button. The laser printer in my back room whirred and clicked. 3 pages came out. I walked to the back, grabbed the warm papers, and stapled them together in the top corner. I brought them back to the counter and set them in front of her. "What do we do?" my mom asked. Her voice was empty. The denial was completely gone. I picked up my cell phone from the counter. "We call Great Aunt Betty," I said. I put the phone on speaker and dialed Great Aunt Betty's number. The shop was so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Betty answered on the second ring. "We pulled the credit report," I said. "He used her social security number to get a $30,000 personal loan for his house down payment. And a commercial hardware card." Betty did not gasp. The line was quiet for 3 seconds. "Lock the deadbolt," Betty said. "I am 5 minutes away." I hung up. I walked to the front door and made sure the brass thumb turn was locked. I went to the small refrigerator under the counter and handed my mom a cold bottle of water. She held it against her forehead. Her chest heaved, but she was not making any sound. It was the quiet, terrifying panic of a woman whose entire world had just turned out to be made of paper. Exactly 5 minutes later, I saw Betty's Buick pull into the parking lot. I unlocked the door for her. She walked in carrying her black purse. She did not say hello. She walked straight to the wooden counter and picked up the 3 stapled pages still warm from my printer. Betty put on her reading glasses. She read the first page. She flipped to the second page. She tapped her index finger against the $30,000 balance. Kathy, Betty said. She looked over her glasses at my mom. There is only one way out of this. You have to call the fraud department at this credit union, and they are going to tell you the exact same thing I am about to tell you. My mom lowered the water bottle. What? She asked. Her voice was raspy. You have to file a police report, Betty said firmly. You have to swear on an official affidavit that you did not authorize these accounts. Once you file the police report for identity theft, the bank will remove the debt from your name. They will go after the person who forged the signature. My mom violently shook her head. She gripped the edge of the wooden counter with both hands. No, she said. No, Betty. I cannot send my own son to jail. He is my boy. Your boy stole your name, Betty said. Her voice did not rise. It stayed perfectly level. Your boy drained your husband's retirement. Your boy left you sitting in a house that is currently 100 degrees inside because he stole the electric money. He is not acting like a son, Kathy. He is acting like a parasite. My mom covered her face with her hands. She finally started to cry. It was not a polite cry. It was a deep, ugly, chest-heaving sob. Before I could reach out to touch her shoulder, someone pounded heavily on the thick glass of the front door. I jumped. We all looked toward the door. My dad was standing outside on the sidewalk. His face was dark red. His white undershirt was completely soaked with sweat. He was holding the white Delaware Collections envelope in his fist. He rattled the brass door handle aggressively. I looked at Betty. She nodded once. I walked over and turned the deadbolt. My dad pushed the door open so hard the brass bell slammed against the glass. The heavy Florida heat spilled into the cool air of my shop. Why did you leave the house? My dad yelled at my mom. He did not look at me. He marched right up to the counter. He slammed the crumpled white envelope onto the wood. I just got off the phone with Brandon. He explained everything. It is just a misunderstanding with his bookkeeper. I stared at him. Dad, he doesn't have a bookkeeper. He doesn't have a company. Stay out of this, my dad barked at me. He turned back to my mom. He smoothed out the crumpled letter with his sweaty hands. Kathy, listen to me. Brandon has a plan. He is going to consolidate all of this. But the bank needs collateral to clear the hardware card and the personal loan. My mom wiped her wet face with the back of her hand. She looked at him through bloodshot eyes. What collateral, David? My dad swallowed hard. His eyes darted around the shop, looking at the clay pots, looking at Betty, looking anywhere but at his wife. Our house, my dad said. We just need to take out a home equity line of credit on our house. Just $50,000. We sign it over to Brandon. He clears the high-interest debt, and he pays us the monthly premium. It frees up his cash flow. We can go to the bank branch tomorrow morning and sign the papers. The shop went dead silent. The rattling of my window AC unit seemed incredibly loud. My dad was asking my mom to put a mortgage on the only thing they had left, the roof over their heads, to pay off the fraudulent debt Brandon had secretly opened in her name. He was choosing to save Brandon from the consequences of a felony by sacrificing their own home. Great Aunt Betty crossed her arms. She did not interrupt. She just watched my mom. My mom looked at the stapled credit report on the counter. Then she looked at the crumpled collections letter. Finally, she looked directly at my dad. The tears in her eyes stopped falling. A strange, cold stillness washed over her face. It was a face I had never seen on her before. My mom looked at my dad. The sweat was dripping off his chin onto his wet collarbone. No, my mom said. It was just one word. It was the quietest word she had spoken all day. My dad blinked. He wiped his chin with his rough hand. Kathy, you aren't listening. If we don't do this, the bank is going to take his house. His whole neighborhood will see the sheriff lock the doors. They can take his house, my mom said. She picked up the stapled credit report. She held it up so my dad could see the black ink. Because he bought it with my name. He stole my social security number, David. He committed a crime. My dad reached across the wooden counter. He tried to snatch the papers out of her hand. Give me that. You don't know what you are reading. I moved before he could grab it. I stepped between my dad and my mom. I pushed his heavy arm away from the counter. My hands were still dry and rough from the clay. Do not reach across my counter, I said. My voice was low. Do not touch her. My dad stepped back. He looked at me like I was a complete stranger. You are tearing this family apart, he said to me. His voice was full of bitter venom. You always hated him. Leave her out of this, my mom said. She stood up from the wooden stool. She did not lean on the granite counter for support. Sierra did not forge my signature. Sierra did not drain your retirement account. Sierra pays her own rent. She is the only person in this family acting like an adult. My dad opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked stunned. He had never heard my mom defend me before, not once in 29 years. "We are a team, Kathy," my dad pleaded. His voice cracked. The anger was leaking out of him, replaced by desperation. "We have been married for 35 years. We have to protect our son." "I am protecting myself," she said. She turned to Great Aunt Betty. "Betty, do you have the number for the police non-emergency line?" My dad's face went completely white. The anger vanished entirely. Absolute raw terror replaced it. "Kathy, no, you can't call the police. He will go to prison." "Then he will go to prison," my mom said. She did not yell. The coldness in her voice was absolute. It was the sound of a woman who had finally woken up. "I am not giving him the house we built. I am not sitting in the dark because he stole the electric money. Get out of the shop, David." My dad looked at her. He looked at Great Aunt Betty. Finally, he looked at me. He realized he was completely outnumbered. He was standing in my shop, surrounded by my pottery, breathing my air conditioning. He had zero power here. He turned around. He walked out the heavy glass door. He did not slam it this time. The door closed softly behind him. The brass bell made a sad, quiet jingle. We watched him walk across the hot asphalt to his truck. He got in. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time. He did not start the engine. He just sat behind the steering wheel with his hands covering his face. Inside the shop, my mom sat back down on the wooden stool. She let out a long, shaky breath. She looked at the stapled papers in her hand. "I need to use your phone, Sierra," my mom said quietly. "My cell phone battery is dead." I picked up my phone from the counter. I unlocked it. I handed it to her. Great Aunt Betty walked around the counter. She placed her hand on my mom's shoulder. She did not pat it. She just rested it there, a firm, steady weight. My mom dialed the local police department. She pressed the phone to her ear. She looked straight ahead at the shelves of my handmade bowls and plates. "Yes, hello," my mom said into the phone. Her voice was shaking, but she did not stop. "I need to report a case of identity theft. Yes, the perpetrator is my son." I stood behind the counter and listened. I had waited my entire life for my mom to see the truth. I had waited for her to choose reality over the illusion of a perfect family. I watched her give the dispatcher Brandon's full name and address. The rattling of my window AC unit kept humming in the background. It was the best sound I had ever heard. My mom hung up the phone. She set the phone down on the wooden counter. The screen went dark. She let out a long, slow breath. Her hands were finally completely still. 2 police officers arrived at my shop 45 minutes later. They wore dark green uniforms. They stood in the cool air of my studio and wrote everything down on small notepads. My mom answered all their questions. She did not look away. She gave them the printed credit report. She gave them the Delaware collections letter. She gave them Brandon's exact address. My dad did not come back inside. He started his truck and drove home alone. 4 months passed. It was the second week of November. The heavy Tampa heat finally broke. The air outside my small apartment window actually felt cool. I did not need to run the rattling AC unit anymore. My parents sold their house in Carrollwood. They had no choice. The $75,000 my dad secretly gave Brandon was gone forever. The money market account was empty. They used the equity from the house sale to pay off their remaining debts and bought a small 2-bedroom condo near a grocery store. My dad took a part-time job at a local hardware store. He works the morning shift in the plumbing aisle to help pay the electric bill. He visits my pottery shop sometimes on his lunch break. He does not stay long. He buys a black coffee from the Cuban bakery down the street, sets it on my counter and nods at me. He still does not know how to talk to me, but he brings the coffee. That is a beginning. My mom comes to the shop every Tuesday and Thursday. She wears a canvas apron. She helps me wipe the dust off the display shelves. She helps me pack the ceramic bowls into boxes for shipping. She is working with a fraud investigator from the bank to slowly clear her credit report. It takes hours of phone calls. She handles every call herself. She also learned how to check her own checking account on her iPad. Brandon lost his house. The sheriff posted the final foreclosure notice on his front door in late September. He did not get to keep the quartz kitchen island. The police arrested him the same week for identity theft and bank fraud. He is currently living in a rented motel room near the airport while he waits for his criminal trial. He does not call my parents. We do not call him. He is walking his own road now. Great Aunt Betty still visits me. She still sits in the wooden chair by the counter. Last week she brought me a small framed photo of my grandmother. I put it on the shelf next to the cash register. On a quiet Friday evening, I locked the deadbolt of my shop. I turned off the main overhead lights. I left the small yellow lamp on in the corner. I poured myself a cup of hot tea. I sat on my wooden stool and looked around the room. I used to think I was the broken part of my family. I thought I was failing because I did not have a big house, a loud voice, or a fake business empire. I thought my quiet life was something to be embarrassed about. Now I know the truth. The loudest people in the room are usually the ones hiding the biggest debts. My life is small. My apartment is exactly 400 square feet. My car is 10 years old, but I own my business outright. I pay my own bills. I sleep through the night because I do not owe anybody a single lie. I set a boundary that saved my parents from complete ruin, and I did it without screaming. My table is small now, but it is steady. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe. There are more stories about women who stop apologizing and start protecting their own peace. Tell me in the comments down below, what was the hardest boundary you ever had to set with your own family? I read every single one,